Tammy Lynn Leppert was a prodigy of poise and public charm, a young woman whose life revolved around a dazzling parade of success and glittering crowns. Born in Rockledge, Florida, in 1965, by the tender age of 16 she had earned nearly 300 titles and accumulated approximately 280 crowns, an extraordinary feat that marked her as a dominant force in the American beauty pageant circuit. From the moment she was tall enough to walk, Tammy was on a relentless journey of competition, perfectly choreographed and managed by her mother, Linda Curtis. Her life was a performance of precision, a carefully constructed image where every hair was combed, every dress sparkling, and every smile flawless. This existence was not merely about winning tiaras, but about embodying an ideal of perfection and control, one her family tightly held onto and nurtured. This scripted life made the fateful morning of July 6, 1983, all the more striking. That day, Linda Curtis noticed something unsettling. Tammy left the house with her hair uncombed. For a girl whose identity was tied inseparably to flawless appearances, a lack of grooming was an unexpected, jarring signal, a visible crack in the immaculate facade that had defined her. It suggested an internal disarray so profound that the very standards of her existence were breaking down. In a life governed by order and polish, this small but potent detail revealed a profound crisis, a silent alarm that whispered of turmoil beneath the surface. By this time, Tammy was no longer only a pageant queen. She was stepping bravely into the world of modeling and acting, aspirations that promised a broader stage but demanded an even more complex navigation of public life. Her visage had appeared on the cover of CoverGirl magazine, a prestigious platform that hinted at the potential for a future in fashion and entertainment beyond beauty pageants. In 1983, she landed roles in films that reflected a youth culture caught between innocence and the burgeoning reach of intrigue and danger. She appeared in the teen comedy Spring Break, where she even featured prominently in the promotional material, and took on a part in the iconic and grittily realistic film Scarface, playing a blonde decoy who played a small but memorable role in a notorious scene. This professional leap was more than a career move. It was a passage from the strictly regimented, family-supervised order of pageants into the less predictable, often perilous atmosphere of the early 1980s Florida film scene. This environment was known for its cocktail of glamour and shadow, the mixture of opportunity and exploitation, of youthful dreams and creeping dangers. For a young woman like Tammy, trained to project control and perfection, the shift was both promising and fraught, introducing her to a world where the rules were not always clear and safety was never guaranteed. Tammy's journey was marked not only by public success, but by private pressure. The expectations imposed by her mother and the world around her carved deep lines of stress, shaping a young woman whose worth seemed inseparable from her flawless exterior and competitive victories. The sheer volume of pageants she entered, nearly 300, speaks to an exhausting routine of preparation, performance, and judgment. Each crown was both a medal of achievement and a reminder of the relentless demands she faced. This pressure cooker of perfection left little room for vulnerability or fractures. Then came the moment when vulnerability showed unmistakably. The unkempt hair on that July morning, a symbol that something profound and painful was taking hold of Tammy. It was a sign that the invisible weight she bore was becoming unbearable. The carefully controlled image was unraveling, threatening to expose the fragile human beneath the crowns. At the same time, her burgeoning career exposed Tammy to darker realities beyond the polished stages of beauty contests. The film industry, especially in that era and locale, was a wolf's den of fleeting friendships, unguarded nights, and an undercurrent of menace. The transition from pageants to Hollywood was a precarious one, a move from protection into potential exposure. Although the promise of stardom shimmered on the horizon, it came with the risk of exploitation and betrayal by those who prowled behind the scenes. In this glittering yet shadowed world, Tammy found herself balancing dreams and fears, success and threat. Her last days reflected this uneasy tension, the poised beauty queen stepping tentatively into a perilous new world, her perfect image disrupted, her mind shaken by experiences she barely understood. The stage was set not just for a personal tragedy, but for a story that would mystify and haunt for decades to come. The girl with 280 crowns was about to face a darkness far beyond the spotlight, a descent marked by disturbing changes, fear, and ultimately, a disappearance that confounded the world she had known. Her life and career embodied both the dazzling heights of youthful ambition and the fragile vulnerabilities that lay beneath the surface. The unraveling of Tammy Lynn Leppert was more than just the fading of a public figure. It was a poignant reminder of the immense pressures young women face in a quest for perfection and recognition, and how, sometimes, those pressures become too great to bear. As her story moves forward into the shadowed chapters of confusion and vanishing, the details of her early life stand as a bittersweet testament to a prodigy lost between two worlds, caught between shining triumph and a heartbreaking unraveling. There comes a moment in some stories where the carefully constructed facade begins to crack, revealing the fragile human beneath it, the point where hope and horror converge in an unsettling dance. For Tammy Lynn Leppert, that moment arrived in the months leading up to her disappearance, marked by a swift and chilling decline into paranoia and isolation that would culminate in a final, desperate break from reality. Tammy's life until that point had been one of discipline and dazzling achievement, a beauty queen with nearly 280 crowns by her teenage years, a model gracing covers, an actress stepping onto the sets of rising Hollywood films. Yet beneath the glossy exterior, an internal storm was gathering, threatening to upend everything she knew and everyone who loved her. The first sign of this transformation can be traced back to a weekend party following the wrapping of the film's Spring Break in 1982. Tammy had attended alone, a young woman amidst the unguarded revelry of the film world's shadows. Those who knew her well recall that she returned changed, a different person, as her childhood friend Wing Flanagan would later say. Her mother, Linda, echoed this haunting notion, recounting how Tammy became consumed by the belief that she had witnessed something horrifying at that party, something she was never meant to see. This event, shrouded in mystery and silence, stands as the dark fulcrum of her unraveling. What exactly Tammy saw remains unknown, locked away in the closed rooms of fear and secrecy. But what emerges clearly is that from this moment forward, her world shifted from opportunity to threat, from the familiar glow of the spotlight to the cold grip of dread. By March 1983, Tammy had begun filming the iconic crime drama Scarface in Miami, a project that would have elevated her career. Yet the grim realities of her inner turmoil manifested starkly on set. On the fourth day of shooting, during a scene involving staged gun violence and artificial blood, Tammy broke down in tears, overcome by a tremendous state of fear and anxiety. So severe was her reaction that she had to leave the set immediately, retreating to her trailer, overwhelmed by panic. Shortly after, she quit the film altogether and returned home, withdrawing from the role and from the life she had been pursuing. This breakdown was more than a moment of nerves. It symbolized the collision of her private terror with the grotesque violence portrayed on screen, a reflection so visceral it shattered her composure. Her mother would later suggest that Tammy's fears were grounded not in imagination but in dangerous knowledge. References to money laundering and whispered warnings of local drug trafficking hinted at truths that may have placed her directly in harm's way. In the weeks that followed, Tammy's paranoia became all-consuming. She confided to her mother that someone was trying to kill her, a stark admission of the depths of her fear. She refused to eat or drink anything from open containers, convinced she was being poisoned. The boundaries between reality and suspicion blurred, her trust eroding until all that remained was raw terror. The crescendo came on July 1, 1983, a mere days before her disappearance. In a violent episode, Tammy smashed windows in her home with a baseball bat and physically attacked Wing Flanagan, a friend who had witnessed her gradual disintegration. This alarming outburst forced Linda Curtis to have her daughter admitted to the Brevard County Mental Health Center for a 72-hour psychiatric observation. Yet the medical evaluation yielded a perplexing result. Tests showed no traces of drugs or alcohol, no chemical triggers for her breakdown. This finding complicates any simplistic narrative of drug-fueled madness, suggesting instead that her paranoia might have been sparked by something very real. Adding to the complexity, Tammy's sister has suggested that Tammy might have learned she was pregnant during this troubled period, introducing an additional layer of stress and vulnerability that could explain some of her desperation and desire to disappear. Through all this, Tammy's life seemed caught in suspended animation, a flickering struggle between the treacherous edge of fear and the remnants of hope. The young woman who had once commanded attention with poise now seemed trapped in an invisible cage of paranoia, her reality fractured. This rapid psychological decline sets the stage for the tragic final days of Tammy Lynn Leppert's extraordinary and troubled life, a poignant reminder of how swiftly a bright star can be eclipsed by shadows, and how the line between victim and madness can sometimes vanish altogether. Her story evokes not only sympathy but a profound unease about the unseen forces that may have conspired to silence her forever. As we move forward, the threads of fear and secrecy tighten, drawing us closer to the fateful day when Tammy stepped beyond the light, leaving behind more questions than answers. On the morning of July 6, 1983, a day that would mark the final chapter in Tammy Lynn Leppert's known story, the air was thick with an unsettling tension, both ordinary and ominous. Around 11 a.m., Tammy left her family home in Rockledge, Florida, accompanied by Keith Roberts, a male friend who would be the last person to see her alive. From the outset, this departure was anything but routine. Tammy's mother, Linda Curtis, immediately took note of her daughter's uncharacteristically disheveled appearance, her hair uncombed, a stark departure from the flawless poise that had defined her public image and personal identity for years. This simple detail hinted at a profound inner turmoil, signaling trouble beneath the surface. As Tammy stepped out with Roberts, conflicting details emerge about her preparedness for the day. Some official records, such as those maintained by national missing persons databases, state that Tammy carried a grey purse with her. Yet other accounts starkly contradict this, claiming she left without shoes and without any purse or money. The implications of these discrepancies are profound. If Tammy left the house barefoot and without her belongings, it would suggest a sudden, desperate flight rather than a planned outing. Such vulnerability would make her an open target to anyone with ill intent. Conversely, carrying a purse might indicate some semblance of control or intent to be away for an extended period. This ambiguity about what she took with her underscores the chaotic and uncertain nature of Tammy's state of mind on that fateful morning. The story unfolds next inside the car, where Roberts is the sole narrator of their interaction. According to his account, Tammy initiated contact by calling him at his workplace, a bank in Lakeland, and requested that he pick her up. During the drive toward Cocoa Beach, Roberts describes a verbal argument erupting between them. Tammy allegedly asked him for $300 and requested a ride to Fort Lauderdale, roughly a 2-hour drive south, to visit a friend. Roberts, however, refused both requests. The tension between them escalated until Tammy demanded to be let out of the car. Roberts complied, stopping the vehicle and essentially leaving her stranded, a decision that weighs heavily with troubling implications. The fact that Roberts abandoned Tammy while she was visibly distressed and vulnerable is deeply concerning. Especially significant is Linda Curtis's expressed fear of Roberts, a sentiment that casts a shadow over his role in that crucial moment. Why would he leave Tammy, a young woman recently released from a mental health facility and fearing for her safety, alone in unfamiliar territory? Why wouldn't he provide even the minimal help she had asked for? These questions linger unanswered, tangled with the complexity of the argument as he recounts it. Roberts' refusal to drive her to Fort Lauderdale or to offer her money, coupled with the decision to let her out somewhere far from home, paints a picture of callousness, or worse, in a scenario that demanded care and caution. Where Roberts left Tammy is itself a matter of slight confusion. Most reports place her at or near the iconic glass bank in Cocoa Beach, a distinctive structure known to locals and travelers alike. However, official police records apparently suggest she was dropped a few blocks south, near an Exxon gas station at the intersection of State Road A1A and 2nd Street North. One tantalizing yet frustrating detail is a report that surveillance footage captured Tammy standing alone in a nearby parking lot, though such footage has never been publicly released or confirmed. Regardless of the exact spot, Tammy's physical location was a public, not secluded place, raising even more questions about her disappearance in broad daylight. From this drop-off point, Tammy's trail grows cold but not silent. In her final known act, she walked to a public telephone and made 3 frantic phone calls to her Aunt Ginger Kolsch's business, a balloon delivery service called Balloonatics. Her aunt, who was out of town at the time, retrieved these messages later and was struck by the urgent and fearful tone in Tammy's voice. This desperate attempt to reach out for help and connection is heart-wrenching, a last thread of hope that something or someone would come to her aid. Yet after these calls, Tammy's presence vanishes from the public record. Despite being in a busy, open area during daylight hours, no credible witnesses have come forward to confirm seeing her either walking away or entering another vehicle. There are no verified sightings beyond that moment. This sudden and complete disappearance of a young woman, recognized, visibly upset, and possibly barefoot, defies simple explanation and adds to the enduring mystery that has confounded investigators and haunted her family for decades. The events of that day are laden with contradictions, uncertainties, and troubling behaviors. Tammy's departure with Keith Roberts, the conflicting accounts of her belongings and footwear, their heated argument culminating in her being left alone and vulnerable, and her final frantic calls to family paint a picture riddled with distress and danger. Most troubling is the fact that the last known person to see her alive was someone her own mother feared, a dynamic that invites deeper scrutiny into his motives and actions but remains shrouded in unanswered questions. As we move beyond that fateful July day, Tammy Lynn Leppert's disappearance becomes a sobering reminder of how quickly a young life can be derailed and lost under unexplained and potentially lethal circumstances. The fragile threads of her final known hours invite us to consider not just the facts as they were reported, but the profound human vulnerability at their core, a vulnerability that was exploited or left unprotected in ways that echo through time, leaving a family, a community, and a nation searching for answers that have yet to come. The investigation into Tammy Lynn Leppert's disappearance was fraught with critical missteps and a profound void where urgency and thoroughness should have been. After her last known sighting on July 6, 1983, one might expect the wheels of law enforcement to grind swiftly into action. Instead, a crucial delay of 5 days passed before Tammy was even officially reported missing. This gap from the day she vanished to when her mother filed the report at 12:30 a.m. on July 11 proved devastating, allowing potential leads, physical evidence, and eyewitness memories to wither in the heat of time. From the outset, the law enforcement approach was hamstrung by a prevailing assumption that Tammy was merely a teenage runaway. This theory aligned with some early reports from friends suggesting she was grappling with personal troubles and perhaps wanted to escape them. While difficult family dynamics and teenage struggles are not uncommon, the immediate labeling of her disappearance as voluntary robbed the investigation of urgency and scope at a juncture when every passing hour mattered. The Cocoa Beach Police Department, case number 21292, appeared to focus on a less aggressive search, potentially missing key opportunities to gather evidence or canvass critical locations. This paradigm placed Tammy's case in the realm of the ordinary rather than the extraordinary, a youthful flight rather than a fearful vanishing. Compounding these early investigative shortcomings was the catastrophic loss of biometric identifiers. Crucial dental records and fingerprint files, which should have been foundational tools, vanished through what authorities have called poor record keeping. This loss cannot be overstated in its impact. Without her fingerprints or dental records, investigators found themselves nearly powerless to cross-reference Tammy against dozens of unidentified Jane Doe remains scattered across the country. While her DNA profile was eventually uploaded to national databases, the absence of these other biometrics has rendered countless identification attempts futile. This failure transformed what should have been a precise forensic starting point into a maze of dead ends, a chilling reminder that institutional lapses can echo through decades. Among the most enigmatic figures in the investigation was Keith Roberts, the last person to see Tammy alive. Roberts' role has invited intense scrutiny and skepticism. Officially, he was interviewed early and reportedly cleared of suspicion, with authorities stating he was not considered a suspect. Yet the public record offers no clear explanation for this decision. Key questions surrounding the depth of his investigation remain unanswered. Was his vehicle thoroughly searched for physical evidence? Were his whereabouts and activities in the hours and days after Tammy's disappearance exhaustively verified? Did he undergo polygraph testing? The absence of transparency fuels suspicion and leaves a glaring hole in the narrative. Roberts' interaction with Tammy on that final day raises troubling concerns. According to his version, a heated argument unfolded during their car ride, centering on Tammy's request for $300 and a ride to Fort Lauderdale. When refused, she demanded to be let out, after which Roberts left her stranded near the glass bank in Cocoa Beach. His departure effectively abandoned a vulnerable teenage girl, distraught and possibly experiencing a mental health crisis, in a busy but isolated spot. This decision starkly contrasts with the expressed fears held by Tammy's mother, Linda Curtis, who stated that Tammy was afraid of Roberts. On the evening of Tammy's disappearance, Curtis attempted to reach Roberts, receiving no response. In any thorough investigation, such contradictions would require rigorous examination, yet they appear to have been met with inadequate scrutiny, further deepening the void in understanding. Beyond Roberts, the investigation left numerous leads unexplored or insufficiently pursued. Reports of an alleged surveillance video capturing Tammy standing alone in a parking lot near the glass bank remain cloaked in secrecy, with no public disclosure of its contents or significance. This footage, if it exists, might have offered vital clues. Its absence adds to the frustrating opaqueness surrounding the early inquiry. In the weeks and months following Tammy's disappearance, filled with hope mingled with despair, the Cocoa Beach police received unusual phone calls from an anonymous woman claiming Tammy was alive and would eventually reach out when ready, even claiming she was pursuing nursing school. These calls, however, provided no verifiable leads and were ultimately dismissed as hoaxes, underscoring not just the difficulty of the case, but the heartbreak of false hope that ensnares families of the missing. Taken together, the official response resembles a patchwork quilt of missed opportunities, institutional misjudgments, and an unsettling reluctance to confront possibly uncomfortable truths. The 5-day reporting delay, the premature runaway assumption, the loss of forensic records, and the superficial clearance of Keith Roberts combined to freeze the investigation in a state of partial paralysis. The void left in the wake of these missteps has grown over the decades into a vast chasm where answers should be. This cold trail, haunted by questions about what could or should have been done differently, continues to frustrate those seeking justice, exposing the harsh reality of how vulnerable victims, especially troubled teens, can sometimes become invisible to the systems designed to protect them. As the investigation stalled and time marched relentlessly forward, the narrative of Tammy Lynn Leppert shifted from one of a missing girl to a haunting enigma, defined by absence and unanswered questions. The failures of those early days continue to cast long shadows, reminding us that sometimes the greatest obstacle to justice is not the mystery itself, but the failure to act when it mattered most. From this point forward in the story, we must ask what the consequences of this void have been, how it shaped the investigation, and what traces remain for us to follow in search of the truth. The disappearance of Tammy Lynn Leppert is shrouded in a constellation of predators and theories that paint a haunting portrait of suspicion, fear, and unanswered questions. At the heart of this mystery lies a troubling spectrum of possible culprits, from infamous serial killers to sinister local figures, a web of drug trafficking shadows, and even the possibility of a mind in crisis. Each theory offers tantalizing clues, but also frustrating gaps, leaving us to navigate a landscape of shadows where truth has long eluded reach. One of the most notable names linked to Tammy's vanishing is Christopher Wilder, notoriously dubbed the Beauty Queen Killer. Wilder's reign of terror in the early 1980s struck fear into communities nationwide, marked by his chilling modus operandi, targeting attractive young women, particularly beauty queens and models, whom he lured with the promise of professional photo shoots. Tammy, a young woman who had amassed nearly 300 pageantry crowns and was breaking into modeling and acting, fit Wilder's profile all too well. He was active in Florida during the same period as Tammy's disappearance, amplifying the aura of threat around him. The connection between Wilder and Tammy escalated when Tammy's mother pursued legal action, filing a lawsuit accusing Wilder of having encountered Tammy on the set of Spring Break and later traveling to Brevard County with intentions to photograph her. This lawsuit embodied the real fear that Wilder was more than a distant menace, that he may have crossed paths with Tammy in a way that led to her harm. Yet, after Wilder was killed in a police shootout in April 1984, the family dropped the suit, and despite these suspicions, authorities were never able to find direct, physical evidence connecting him to Tammy's disappearance. Wilder remains a dark specter hovering near the case, a symbol of known evil that cannot yet be definitively tied to Tammy's fate. Another figure whose shadow looms over the story is John Crutchley, dubbed the vampire rapist. Crutchley's crimes were grotesque and calculated. A systems engineer by day, Crutchley harbored a sinister double life. Arrested in 1985 for the kidnapping and brutal assault of a young woman, his chilling use of medical equipment to drain her blood earned him his infamous nickname and a reputation as one of the most disturbing predators in Brevard County. Crutchley was suspected in multiple murders, some reports suggest as many as 30, and was considered a person of interest in Tammy's disappearance. His presence in the area during the early 1980s speaks to the grim reality of the dangers Tammy feared. However, unlike the Wilder case, no concrete link or modus operandi matched Tammy's situation. There was no documented personal connection or evidence pointing to Crutchley's involvement, and he ultimately died by suicide in prison in 2002. Crutchley embodies the terrifying context of the area during that time, a local monster whose very existence validated fears but who, without evidence, remains a shadowy possibility rather than a confirmed suspect. Delving into the family's perspective, Tammy's mother has pursued another unsettling theory, that Tammy's disappearance was the result of her knowledge of illicit drug trafficking activities in Florida. The theory suggests that Tammy had become an inadvertent witness to dangerous operations involving drug money laundering or other criminal acts at the infamous post-spring break party she attended. According to accounts, Tammy told her mother that she had seen something awful and allegedly referenced terms like money laundering, signaling that her fears were anchored in something she had really encountered rather than pure paranoia. This theory posits that Tammy's intense fear, her belief that someone was trying to kill her, and her refusal to eat or drink from open containers were not symptoms of psychosis but valid responses to a mortal threat. If Tammy had indeed stumbled upon a criminal enterprise, those behind it would have every reason to silence her permanently. The turbulent world of 1980s Florida, a hub for cocaine trafficking and violent criminal activity, provides a credible backdrop for this suspicion. Yet, as compelling as this narrative is, it remains unproven. No direct evidence surfaced to confirm Tammy's knowledge or her involvement with drug traffickers, leaving this theory tantalizing but ultimately speculative. The final and perhaps most tragic theory centers on Tammy's mental health. Observers have pondered whether the erratic behavior she exhibited in the weeks before her disappearance, her paranoia, delusions, and violent outburst, were the signs of a severe psychiatric crisis, potentially juvenile-onset schizophrenia or a psychotic break. Such a condition could have led her to wander off in a confused, vulnerable state, disconnected from reality and unable to protect herself from harm. This theory is underscored by the absence of drugs or alcohol in her system during her psychiatric evaluation, ruling out substance-induced psychosis. If mental illness was the driving force behind her disappearance, it paints a deeply sorrowful picture of a young woman lost not to violence at the hands of others, but to an internal struggle that led her to vanish without a trace. This view is complicated by the specific criminal references Tammy made and her intense fear of real-world threats. Did her mind weave delusions from trauma, or was her terror entirely justified? The mental health theory delivers no easy answers. Each theory, whether focusing on known predators, criminal conspiracies, or mental health crises, brings both weight and frailty to Tammy's story. Christopher Wilder's notorious record and presence in Florida during her disappearance invite chilling speculation but lack concrete proof of involvement. John Crutchley's horrific crimes paint a picture of real danger close to home but never directly tie him to Tammy. The drug trade theory explains her fears with a harsh realism but remains unsubstantiated by evidence. The mental health crisis theory humanizes Tammy's suffering but leaves open whether her disappearance was a tragic accident or something more sinister. Together, these possibilities form a constellation of predators and perceived threats that illuminate the complexity of Tammy Lynn Leppert's disappearance. They reflect a young woman caught in the crosshairs of multiple dangers, real and imagined, any of which might have led to her permanent vanishing. Yet none can be proven definitively, leaving this story suspended in an unsettling limbo between known horrors and haunting unknowns. As we move forward in understanding what happened to Tammy, we must carry with us the awareness that every theory holds a fragment of truth and a shadow of doubt. Her disappearance is not just a tale of speculation, it is a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by so many young women, the monsters lurking in plain sight, and the enduring pain of a family left seeking answers in the dark. The silence around Tammy Lynn Leppert's fate remains profound, beckoning us to listen closely and never stop searching in the fading light of these silent shadows. The echoes of Tammy Lynn Leppert's disappearance have reverberated through more than 4 decades, leaving a profound impact on her family, community, and those who continue to seek answers in this enduring mystery. Her sudden and unexplained vanishing in 1983 did not simply erase a young woman from the world. It created a space filled with grief, hope, speculation, and relentless pursuit for the truth, a pursuit that her family, especially her sister Suzanne, has kept alive in the harsh light of an unresolved nightmare. Suzanne Leppert's journey is, in many ways, emblematic of the story's ongoing heartache and perseverance. Adopted at a young age and only much later discovering her biological connection to Tammy, Suzanne has become a tireless advocate for her sister's memory and for the pursuit of justice. Through modern channels like social media, she has created a dedicated platform, a Facebook group named My Missing Sister Tammy Leppert, serving as a living archive of information, updates, and shared memories. This digital space is a testament to how the family refuses to allow Tammy's identity to be lost to time, and it draws a wider community into the ongoing conversation about her fate. Suzanne's advocacy demonstrates the powerful and sometimes vital role that technology and communal memory play in keeping cold cases in the public consciousness. The media, too, has played a significant part in sustaining public interest in Tammy's story across the years. Her disappearance was notably featured in the television series Unsolved Mysteries, which aired episodes in both its original run and later revivals, introducing her case to a broad national audience. These moments of exposure inevitably sparked a wave of new leads and fan interest, fueling the hope that fresh eyes and ears might uncover something missed in the earlier investigations. Similarly, true crime podcasts, documentaries, and online forums have ensured that Tammy's story remains part of the wider dialogue on missing persons and unsolved crimes, offering a platform for theorists, amateur sleuths, and grieving families to exchange information and renew calls for justice. Despite this sustained attention, the case of Tammy Lynn Leppert faces numerous ongoing challenges. While advances in forensic science and technology have revolutionized many cold cases, Tammy's investigation has been hampered by critical early errors that continue to cast a long shadow. The loss of her dental and fingerprint records, a devastating blow to any long-term identification efforts, limits the tools available to investigators, especially concerning unidentified remains found nationally. Although her DNA profile exists and has been cross-referenced against many unknown bodies, no positive matches have emerged, prolonging the mystery and the family's anguish. This gap in conclusive evidence underscores a deeper frustration that permeates the case, the uneasy void left by early investigative missteps. The initial sluggish response, assumptions of Tammy as a runaway, and failure to preserve key biometric data have all conspired to stall what could have been a more rigorous and fruitful inquiry. The incomplete nature of the initial investigation means that tantalizing leads, like the exact circumstances of her last known moments and the true extent of her interactions on that day, remain clouded in uncertainty. The official clearance of Keith Roberts, the last known person to see Tammy alive, without publicly detailed scrutiny, further fuels suspicions and unanswered questions, highlighting the institutional blind spots that have haunted the search for truth. Amid these complexities, the emotional toll on those left behind is immeasurable. For Tammy's family and the local community in Florida, her disappearance is not merely a closed file or a distant news story, it is a persistent ghost in their collective conscience. There is a visceral absence for a young woman who once held so much promise, a void marked not only by memories but by an aching lack of closure. The persistent uncertainty about her fate creates a haunting tension that molds their grief and resilience, a blend of sorrow and hope that defines their daily reality. This lingering gap in justice and understanding transforms Tammy's story from an isolated tragedy into a poignant call to action. The community, listeners, and anyone with even the smallest piece of information are urged to come forward. New leads, no matter how minor they seem, could be the thread that unravels this long-standing mystery. The amplification of efforts through public engagement continues to be critical, reminding us that cold cases need not remain statues in time, but can be revived with renewed interest and diligence. As we reflect on the echoes of Tammy Lynn Leppert's disappearance, We hold in our minds the image of a vibrant young woman poised on the cusp of a promising future, one who vanished into the shadows of time but whose memory refuses to fade. Her story is a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of those who refuse to let a loved one be forgotten. For Tammy, lost to time but not to memory, the search for truth and justice continues, carried by the voices of those who still call her name.